and welcome to another Retired Techie video. This time I'm going to be talking about my Debian 12 Cockpit VM or virtual machine server I built in the last video, or a couple videos ago anyways. I'll put these together in a playlist so they keep together, but I did some research and overcame some issues. I wanted to get these conversations done because we'll be doing a little traveling over the next couple of days, and I didn't want this hanging. So I'm going to try and get it out as soon as possible. So if you want to know what happened, just stay tuned, and I'll tell you what happened, what did, and what was fixed, what I couldn't fix, what I still don't understand. We're going to go over all that. This isn't going to be a rehash of the install, but it's going to be more of a high-level view. So let's get started. So as per, and I checked it out, it was 2 videos ago, I created a virtual machine server out of Debian 12 in Cockpit after having several issues with Proxmox, and I built it on a B-Link box. And like I say, check the video out because that's sort of the basis for this one. I just don't want to go through all that stuff again. But anyway, some of the things that came across was, first off, Debian Stable has very old versions of things. Well, again, very old is a relative term, but in some areas like Cockpit, things are moving fast. And again, I didn't really have a great understanding of how KVM virtual machines work, and which is probably some of the reasons I had problems with Proxmox, which didn't really give it a fair shake. I mean, I've done a lot more work on this Cockpit one than I did on Proxmox, so I got to at some point jump back and try Proxmox again with what I learned here and give it a little more work for sorting out some of the issues. Anyway, I just wanted to do this update video because, like I said, I fixed some problems. I got it working, I'll say satisfactorily, not 100% the way I want, but I think some of the issues are not Cockpit related, but more like virt-manager or virt-lib related. So let's dive into what I found out, what I did differently on the second time around, okay? Okay, let's get started. Hardware selection review. Well, we're using the same computers. That hasn't changed. 32 gigs of memory, 8 cores or 8 processors, 8 threads, 16 cores total. Storage, 1.25 terabytes. OS install is going to be Debian 11. We are, in this case, going to be enabling backports, and then we're going to be doing a slightly different package install when we get to that point. Hardware test, we're still going to look at the smart drive data just to make sure the hard drives are good, and then we're going to look at our network, and it's going to be important this time around for us to know what the network connection is because it might change a couple times depending on what we do. So we're going to have to be able to keep track of that. And after that point, we'll be able to install the Cockpit packages, and where possible, we're going to pull them from the back ports because they're more up to date. We're going to test the interface, we're going to set up our network bridge, and we're going to set up a Samba share. Not necessarily in that order, but we're going to do all of those. And once that's done, we can look at building our first virtual machine. We can go investigate the pools, volumes, file structure. This is something I had a problem with last time. I've done some more research on it. I still have a problem with it, but I think I understand it a little better now. But we will see how that goes when we get to that part, okay? This is going to be our revised installation of Debian 12. First, we're going to do the base install. The IP address does not matter, so we're going to use the default, as we're going to default to NetworkManager later on, and we'll cover this in a little more detail. We're going to include the SSH server. We're going to install the packages sudo wget curl smartmon tools gpg and xz utilities, although we could probably get away without wget or curl. We need one of them, and we're not going to do the bridge utilities like we did last version because we don't need them. We're also going to add the Debian backport repositories. We'll cover that a little more later. Then we're going to add the 45drivers.com repository. This is some third-party software they were kind enough to make deb packages for. Some interesting stuff there, and we're going to use those. We'll talk about that a little more later. Then we're going to install Cockpit and its various modules, and the modules are either going to be from the back port or from the 45 drivers. Cockpit Machine, which is virtual machine support, Cockpit Podman for container support, Cockpit File Sharing for SMB support, Cockpit Navigator, which is a built-in browser for your Cockpit installation. Cockpit Identities is a little more advanced user manager group that also handles Samba passwords, and Cockpit PCP for historical data. So first question, what is a backport? So basically, Debian stable is downstream, Debian testing is upstream. A backport is a software package taken from Debian testing and made available to Debian stable. Since Debian testing is upstream and Debian stable is downstream, backport is the designation used. So backports are packages made available to stable from the upstream testing. Again, hence the name backport. Backports do not undergo extensive testing, not as much as what's in Debian stable anyways. Installation of backports is disabled by default. You can't accidentally install a backport. You must specifically or explicitly install backports. That's just the way it's designed. Again, they're not tested as much, and there's no guarantee they're going to be as stable as existing Debian stable packages. So you must explicitly install them. Okay, let's talk a little bit about getting a backport installed. So to add a backport repository, we want a CD to our etc apt sources.list.d folder. This is where any repository that's not one of the standard ones should be going, not into the sources.list file, but into this directory. It's accessed by the sources.list file, and all the files within are run. So this is where you put the ones that are not standard. So I'm using echo deb http://deb.debian.org, Debian bookworm backports main. There's also contrib and then non-free backports. And then I'm doing a pipe into sudo t bookworm backports.list. I tried doing a sudo echo and then sending it to a file, but that didn't work because apparently the sudo and echo does not carry over to writing a file. I found this was the easiest way to get the file created. Once it's created, you can do a sudo apt update, and it should go through and read all the backports. Now, if you want to install a backport, I suggest using apt install -t bookworm backports followed by the package names. This has always worked better for me. It seems to, in my experience, that this picks up all the dependency packages from the backports as well as the main ones. I've not had as much luck with using apt install package name / bookworm -backports, but your results may vary. Either one can work. Like I said, I've just had the most luck with the first one using the -t bookworm backports option. Okay, next we want to install the 45 drivers repository. First thing we need to do is download the import key, the GPG key. It's a security key to make sure you're getting the right files. You can get this key with wget-p, and then we ~stat our home directory and the link to download the file from. Or you can use curl-o or home directory gpg.asc and then the link to get the file from. Either way will work. The gpg.asc is a compressed encrypted file. We need to actually create the key from this. So we're going to use sudo gpg-o and then the path user share keyrings 45 drivers archive keyring.gpg. Then we're going to use a double dash dearmore and then gpg.asc is our input file. Some people put the dearmore first. I found it works better to do the -o and then the directory first and then the dearmore. Once you're done, you can remove the gpg.asc file with rm. Once we've got the key, we can then go to our etc apt sources.list.d directory. If you're following this in order, you should already be there. We're going to use sudo curl dash S, which is silent, and then big S, which is show errors, and L if the file has been linked somewhere else to follow the link, and our repo, then dash O for output, 45 drivers.sources. Once this is done, you can do a sudo apt update, and that should read the 45 drivers repo as well. Let's talk about cockpit networking on Debian. In our initial install, and when you do a normal install, you're going to come up with an unmanaged network interface. This is because Debian by default defines the interface in the /etc network interfaces file. And when you have an entry in there, NetworkManager will not manage that, only the interfaces file. Therefore, on an initial install, it's not managed by Cockpit. To manage it in Cockpit, we need to come out or delete the interface's network settings, restart the network manager, and we have to note the IP address might change at this point. If you went with the manual or static IP address on install, it probably will change. If you went with a DHCP default install, it might or might not change. So you'll need to be able to find that new IP address. Once you log back into Cockpit, the network will now be managed. And we're going to look into that in a little bit of detail here. So when you initially log into Cockpit and you go to the Network tab, you're going to see interfaces, and then down below that, you're going to see unmanaged interfaces. And you will note that our Ethernet card is unmanaged. And in this case, it had a static IP address because that's what I set up. But you can see it's unmanaged. If it remains unmanaged, then you use something like bridge.utilities to set up your bridge network at an OS level. But we're going to fix this. So if we look at our etc network interfaces file, we see the primary network interface defined here with a ENP2S0. It has an INET static or IP address or gateway, a DNS server. And what we need to do is we need to open this file using sudo so we can edit it. And instead, we want to see the primary network face all commented out, or you can just delete it if you want. If you're going to delete it, I suggest making a backup copy of the file. Otherwise, if you just comment it out, that works fine too. Once it's commented out, we can go ahead and restart. And when we restart, we will see that the ENP2S0 network is now in the interfaces section, and there is no unmanaged network. Easy, right? Again, the hard part is if your IP address changes, you might have to get back into your headless server with an actual monitor and keyboard to see what the new IP address is. Once that's done, it's easy peasy, right? By simply clicking on the name of the network adapter, we can be taken to the setup page for the network adapter, where we can switch it over to manual, and then we can enter our own IP address and other information manually in this case. Remember, Cockpit uses NetworkManager, so we're setting NetworkManager up through Cockpit. There are some command line tools for it, but this, believe me, is much easier to do. Okay, another issue I had was with the time servers. I left them in automatic, and it was showing an error on the main Cockpit page. So I tried setting it to the region, aka Asia/Manila. This didn't work also. I actually ended up needing to go in and specify which NTP servers I wanted to use. In this case, 0.asiapoolntp.org through 3.asia.pool.ntp.org. Once I specified those, I didn't have any more problems with the network time servers or time protocol. So if it works in automatic for you, great. If you have to set a region, that's the next easiest. And if that doesn't work, then you might be forced to actually enter the NTP servers you want to use. But you can look those up online, so it's not too big a problem. Okay, when you're looking at the cockpit interface, we're going to set up our virtual machines and things. There's definite difference between using the version in Debian stable, which is 287, and using the version out of testing, which is 308, which is actually closer to the current release version of Cockpit. This actually resolves several issues. So yeah, it's definitely worth it. Storage pools are an interesting concept. They're strictly for storage of virtual machines, but I will question that because I uploaded some ISO files, and when I saved those to a specific directory, that created a new storage pool. Your mileage may vary. Your storage pools though can actually be any format, and they can be local, they can be remote. It's very flexible. I like that. What I don't like so much is the volumes. What was confused me last time is the volume is the actual machine hard drive, folder, or whatever you want to call it, that the virtual machine resides in, and it's got to be specific formats. The problem I'm having and still having is when I create a virtual machine and it says create new, it creates it in a specific directory, not the directory I designated for it to go into. And that's sort of my question is there a way in Cockpit to save these to the non-default directory? And I think this is probably a libvirt problem and not a Cockpit problem, but I'm not real sure on that. As you see, if you go to create new virtual machine, you got create new volume, but you've got your storage pools, but there's no way to actually place that new volume someplace other than the default storage. Now, if you go into the virtual machine data interface, you can see you've got the disk, the default storage, and it's in variable libvirt images. It's not where I want to put it, but that's where it goes. And I can add a new disk here, but when I try and add a new disk and then use that as the main disk, I keep getting errors. Maybe I can create new disks here and use them in a new virtual machine where I can go pick them. I don't know. I still got a lot of testing to do with this, but it's very clunky here. This disk thing should show up when you're creating the virtual machine and allow you to determine what directory the virtual machine actually goes in. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure it's not that easy on a software level. And like I say, I think this may be a libvirt problem and not a Cockpit problem. All right. Thanks to those who hung in there with me through this whole process. It's been an education, and you can't ask for more than that. I think I've got a good understanding of virtual machines now, and I can't wait to do a rerun of Proxmox and see if the knowledge I've hard won will help me with that one. Who knows? We'll see. I don't know if I'm going to do that next. I got a few virtual machines I need to set up on this virtual machine server. I want to set up a Cloudflare server for getting into the network. I want to set up a Pi-hole Unbound server, and I've got a media server. I do have another computer I want to set up as a virtual server or virtual machine server, but I'm still waiting on a few parts for it. So that'll be an upcoming video at some point too. And then once I get all this stuff working, I got to redo the network, which will be another video at some point. So I think I'm covered for the next couple of months. We'll see how it goes. I just want to thank everybody for watching, and please like, subscribe, comment. I like comments. Usually I like more than 1 or 2 word comments, but I'll take what I can get. So please come back and join us for the next video. Thank you.